Horror is the real world without the boring parts. The image of the witch you have shows your comfort with women and power.
Buscábamos algo mejor que una inteligencia artificial para recomendarte libros, y lo hemos encontrado. Personas. Hoy entrevistamos a Grady Hendrix para hablar de su libro Brujería para chicas descarriadas de la editorial Minotauro. El libro nace de experiencias de miembros de tu familia. ¿Qué te contaron y por qué decidiste escribir sobre ello?
I have two relatives who told the family that they had been sent away as teenagers to have their babies in secret at maternity homes and had not seen their children since. They were 18 and 19 when this happened. They told us when they were 70s. So a very long time. And I could not understand this. It was really terrible. And there was only one history of the homes written by a woman named Ann Fessler. And I read this book and realized that these homes, there were so many of them. And the girls sent to them could not use their real name. They could not say where they're from. They had no information about what would happen to them or their babies. And they were somewhere completely foreign to them, hidden. And I thought, this is a great story here. This would be a great setting for a story. But it took me a few years to sort of get the courage to try to write it.
Si te interesan los libros, suscríbete a nuestra newsletter en librotea.com. ¿Cómo llegaste a la idea de mezclar estas historias reales con la brujería?
Actually, the first two drafts had no witches. They were very boring. And my editor pointed out we had witch in the title, but no witch in the story. I did not know what monster I was going to use, but I write horror. I had to have something. And I realized that witches are always associated with children and childbirth. People talk about witches being midwives many years ago. In fairy tales, witches are always eating children. And I realized there was this connection. So it made a lot of sense.
La imagen de las brujas varía mucho según las épocas y las perspectivas. ¿Querías explorar ese carácter ambivalente del concepto de las brujas en tu novela?
No, I did not want to explore this at all, but I had to. As I wrote the book, I realized, yes, the image of the witch is so different. There is the witch who eats children in fairy tales. There is women who were falsely accused of witchcraft and killed. There are witches who celebrate their power, these figures of liberation. There's the Blair Witch. There are so many different witches. And I realized that the image of the witch you have shows your comfort with women and power. If you are uncomfortable with women in power, your witch will eat children and worship Satan. If you are comfortable with women in power, your witch is a figure of liberation and freedom. So this was very hard to understand for me and to write about. Also add in that witches are not real, but they are also real. Women do not fly on broomsticks and cast spells, but they die for this in real life. So witches are very complicated. The witch has always been a figure who has knowledge, who passes on knowledge, who teaches spells and techniques and recipes and information to another generation, the old witch teaching the young witch. And so for me, this made a lot of sense. My main characters have no information about their lives, what will happen to them, what will happen to their babies. But here is the witch who possesses a secret knowledge. And so it made sense to have them interact.
El terror se asocia a lo masculino, pero hay muchas autoras de terror y cine de terror hecho por mujeres. ¿Crees que ellas están más cerca del terror de lo que parece?
People talk about horror being for boys. Horror has always been for women. The first horror novel people still read is Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. The biggest horror writer of the 18th century is Anne Radcliffe. In the 19th century, most horror writers were women. Toni Morrison and Shirley Jackson wrote the two most important haunted house novels of the 20th century. And you look at the 80s, yes, Stephen King, but the other best-selling authors were Anne Rice and V.C. Andrews. So this idea, I feel like women have been erased from horror's history, and I feel like we have forgotten them for some reason. But for me, horror has always belonged to women. I am a guest. And for the book, I felt like I had to balance the real-life horror happening to these girls and the horror of witchcraft, the fictional horror, which was very difficult. And I call them girls just to remind people that these were children. These are teenagers being asked to have their children taken from them.
Fue difícil darle forma a estos personajes, chicas adolescentes muy diferentes entre sí y enfrentadas a una situación terrible.
I mean, the job of a novelist is to imagine the experience of other people. And if you are telling someone that they cannot accurately imagine the life of a woman, that is because they are not doing their job properly. So for me, I had a lot of mothers share their stories with me. I talked to many doctors, women mostly, about childbirth in 1970. But it's also just knowing people growing up, you know, what are teenage girls like? What do they think about? What do they want? And of course, because it is 1970, astrology was very important, you know, at the time. So early, I talked to a friend who knows astrology to get everyone's sign and character traits, even though they don't talk about it in the book much.
Tus libros siempre se basan en situaciones reales mezcladas con terror. ¿Es importante que exista siempre ese vínculo con lo real?
So for me, horror is about the world around us. So it must accurately reflect that. It's not about another planet or the future or dragons. It is about things that exist mostly. But for me, horror is, it says something to the reader that this book will be about the real world, but not boring. Horror is the real world without the boring parts. Because I think that horror is about fear. And yes, we are afraid of ghosts or a haunted house or vampiros, but we're also afraid when we do something new, go on a date, go to another country, start a new job. We feel fear in all these situations because we are doing something new. Being new and being afraid are very close. And I feel like horror promises the reader, this is something new. This is the real world, but seen in a new way.
Todos tus libros parten de algún arquetipo del terror, de vampiros a asesinos o, ahora, las brujas. ¿Qué tema te gustaría abordar en el futuro?
Oh, of course. I mean, I've already written my next book, and I know the next two books after that, and possibly a third book. So yes, I really like my job. I get to think about these things all the time and let them cook until they are ready. This book, Brujas, it took me many years from thinking about it to writing it. And even then, the writing took 2 years. So everything has to cook for a very long time. But my head is full of monsters and, you know, these tropes from horror. But I enjoy my job.
¿Qué nos puedes contar sobre tu siguiente libro?
The next book I have written is about monsters, because there is this image we always have of the monster in the woods, the thing in the darkness outside, this wild creature. And I think every culture has a different kind of beast, monster. But so yes, so that is my next book.
¿Crees que en el caso de la literatura de terror el cine es una influencia tan importante como la propia
The
literatura?
film influence, the influence of everything is a little bit hard to describe. For me growing up, like many people, I watched horror movies with my friends for fun. And so with my books, I want to recreate that feeling of fun and excitement that horror has, that I will see something new and shocking and exciting and interesting. And that for me is the influence of film, trying to recreate this feeling. But also for me, for writers like Paul Tremblay, I know that music is very important. We both like punk music very much. And the power, the force, the strength of punk, the rawness is something he and I always try to capture in our books.
¿Qué libros recomienda el autor?
We have to talk about a witch book first. There's a book from the 1920s that was very, very famous when it came out, but it has been forgotten today, called Lolly Willows by Sylvia Townsend Warner. And it has been reissued now several times just recently this year. And it is a British book. It's about a childless middle-aged woman who is tired of being invisible and patronized, and so she moves to a small town and worships Satan and becomes a witch, and it works out very well for her. It's a really moving book, but also very funny, and I often say it's like P.G. Wodehouse if he was a witch who cared about women. Another book that I think has been a big influence on me recently is Shirley Jackson's We Have Always Lived in the Castle. This book is told from the point of view of a young girl, and it's I think it's a book that I never write in first person, and this book is first person, and it's about a young girl who maybe killed her entire family, but she's doing okay, but maybe not as okay as we think. But this is a book I have so much admiration for. And another book very similar to it is Charles Portis's True Grit, Western, also about a 13-year-old girl. This girl is going for revenge against the man who killed her father, and written from her point of view. And this book and We Have Always Lived in the Castle are big influences on me. I wish I could write like this. I am always very jealous. And then the fourth book, I will say, a book that is so important to me is by Clive Barker, his short stories, Libros de Sangre, and written in 1985, so it is the 40th anniversary. And I helped my publisher bring out a new edition of these books, or these short stories. And reading them again, even though they are 40 years old, there's nothing else like them. They are still shocking. They are still raw. They are still upsetting. I feel like 40 years ago, Clive Barker gave horror a challenge, and we have not beaten him yet. So we have to keep trying.
Si quieres conocer a más inspiradores, entra en nuestro canal de YouTube y suscríbete.